Analysis of Robert Browning's dramatic monologue, My Last Duchess. Summary of My Last Duchess. My Last Duchess is loosely based on the historical events of the Duke of Ferrara of Italy, who narrates the events to an envoy or representative of another nobleman, the Count of Tyrol, whose daughter the Duke is soon to marry. These details are revealed throughout the poem, but understanding them from the opening helps to illustrate the irony that Browning employs, since in his tour of his home he displays the painting of his last wife, Lucrezia, a young woman who died only 3 years after their marriage. As he shows the visitor through his palace, he stops before a portrait of the late Duchess, apparently a beautiful young girl. The Duke begins reminiscing about the portrait sessions and then about the Duchess herself. His musings give way to a diatribe on her disgraceful behavior. He claims she flirted with everyone and did not appreciate his gift of 900-years-old name. As his monologue continues, the reader realizes with ever more chilling certainty that the Duke, in fact, caused the Duchess's early death when he says that when her behavior escalated, he gave commands, then smiles stopped together. Having made this disclosure, the Duke returns to the business at hand, arranging for another marriage with another young girl. As the Duke and the emissary walk, leaving the painting behind, the Duke points out other notable artworks in his collection as they continue the tour, as if his former wife is just a possession he displays, along with other treasures he owns. Analysis of My Last Duchess. Browning has more in mind than simply creating a colorful character and placing him in a picturesque historical scene. The specific historical setting of the poem is significant because the Italian Renaissance held a particular fascination for Browning and his contemporaries, for it represented the flowering of the aesthetic and human alongside, or in some cases, even in place of, the religious and the moral. Thus the setting allows Browning to explore sex, violence, and aesthetics all entangled, perhaps suggesting that the Duchess was punished for her natural sexuality. Like some of Browning's fellow Victorians, the Duke sees sin lurking in every corner, whether the Duchess was actually sinful or not. The reason the speaker here gives for killing the Duchess differs from that given by the speaker of Porphyria's lover for murder. However, both women are nevertheless victims of a male desire to inscribe and fix female sexuality. The desperate need to do this mirrors the efforts of Victorian society to mold the behavior, sexual and otherwise, of individuals. The Renaissance was a time when morally insensitive men like the Duke exercised absolute power, and as such it is a fascinating study for the Victorians, who felt little control in their industrialized world. Like Porphyria's lover, My Last Duchess engages its readers on a psychological level as we determine the motives and circumstances of the Duke's story. Because we hear only the Duke's perspective, we must piece the story together ourselves. Browning forces the reader to become involved in the poem in order to understand it, and this adds to the fun of reading the work. Form of My Last Duchess. My Last Duchess is comprised of rhyming pentameter lines, or 10-syllable lines. The lines do not employ end stops, rather they use enjambment, or sentences and other grammatical units that don't conclude at the end of lines, but run into the next line. Consequently, the rhymes do not create a sense of closure when they come, but rather remain a subtle driving force behind the Duke's compulsive revelations. The Duke is quite a performer. He mimics others' voices, creates hypothetical situations, and uses the force of his personality to make horrifying information seem merely colorful. This poem, like Porphyria's lover, is a classic example of a dramatic monologue in that the speaker is distinct from the poet. An audience is suggested but never appears in the poem, and the revelation of the Duke's character is the poem's primary aim.